Hi, everyone. How are you doing? It's late. For me, it's 2:45 in the morning here on Sunday, the 11th of June, 2023. It's time for a little extra credit here on Morning Combat. Yeah, going to do things a little bit differently today. We haven't done we haven't done the Morning Combat extra credit in some time. We wanted to bring it back on the right occasion, and I think doing one after the UFC is finish with a pay-per-view is probably as good a time as any. So thumbs up if you're watching on this. Please hit subscribe. Two things to check out. I did a post-fight show for UFC 289. As soon as that we went live as soon as that event was over. So immediate reaction. And then I want to remind everyone, tomorrow, Morning Combat, 11 a.m. in the East. 11 a.m. in the East. Me, Brian Campbell, reacting to UFC 289 and to some big and interesting results, by the way, in the world of boxing, too. Teofimo Lopez defeating Josh Taylor, and then Jaime Munguia defeating Sergey Derevyanchenko. So there's a lot to get to, Amanda Nunes retiring. We'll talk to BC about all of that. So two things you can check out. Post-fight show for UFC 289, tomorrow's show Monday. For today's show, as you guys know, on Extra Credit, we kind of focus in on the undercard. Let's talk about it a little bit. So your 289, of course, taking place at the Rogers Arena in Vancouver, Canada. By the way, when Mike Malott walked out, I forgot to mention this on the post-fight show, but they had a real FedEx Field moment, right, where the frame, the gate on the side of the riser fell over, and people came flying off of it as a consequence. All right, let me get my old man glasses so I can read this effing website. But let's get to it here very quickly if we can. Your main event for the prelim card between Nassourdine Imavov and Chris Curtis ends at 3:02 of round 2 due to a no contest, an accidental clash of heads. So this is a problem that Curtis finds himself in now 2 times in a row. At least the referee caught it this time, which we'll get to in just a second. But listen, when you have southpaw and orthodox fighters, right, just imagine the reality. If you're one standing this way, the person in front of them, their lead hand is going to be closest to my lead hand, which means we're both going to dip the same direction, right? That's typically what that means. And so you get clash of heads in MMA, kickboxing, and boxing anytime you have that southpaw versus orthodox setup. And it has happened now. Again, I can't remember the Kelvin Gastelum setup as quite off the top of my head, but the point I'm trying to make here is with this fight, Chris Curtis, Imavov came in off of the openness that came from having that stance. So it is something that all southpaws have to be more cognizant of when they go up against orthodox fighters, because that's obviously going to be a sort of a common thing that you find yourself in. It really, really sucks for Chris Curtis that 2 fights in a row this has happened. Now, it cost him the W before. This time it did not. It goes into his record as a no contest, but I think he was looking to rebound. Who knows if he might have. Up until that point, he was doing some things well, but in my judgment, Imavov won the first round. He was throwing a lot of linear shots. He was on the outside moving. He was sticking. Chris Curtis was doing a pretty good job of landing a left to the body as he retreated. So it wasn't like he wasn't respectably performing. I think he was. But I thought Imavov had won that first round. Of course, there was a bit of a takedown and some back control that came with it as well. And then in the second round, as they went to clinch, then this happens. If you're Chris Curtis, this is devastating. I think he was looking to get back into not merely the winning ways, but to really make a move. How old is Chris Curtis? I think, pardon me, Chris Curtis is only 35. Yeah, time is now, right? He's not silly about that either. Time is now to make a move, and I think he wanted to do that. I don't know where this leaves him. Now, by the way, because of the win and the way the purses are split, as everyone now knows, he's now going to get half of what he ordinarily would, given the circumstances. So that's terrible. That sucks. I saw that online there was a certain kind of person who was at least trying to say that, because Curtis was losing, he was looking for a way out without looking for a way out. Like, he didn't want to expressly be like, hey, I'm done, but he wanted to do that. And of course, listen, I don't think these conversations are ever unfair on their own, but they just never seem to happen in all that intelligent a way. Is it possible that a guy 40 fights into his career knew he was overmatched and wanted to get the upper hand? It's possible. I certainly couldn't rule that out. But Imavov has a way of fading. Curtis had cornered Strickland against Imavov previously, and I think he liked his chances no matter what. The first round did not go his way. Many times the first round doesn't go his way. And Chris Curtis, this was the first time he had given up a takedown inside the UFC. So listen, Imavov is a tough customer, but at the same time, I am not convinced that he wanted out argument is like the strongest explanation of what happened. I don't really buy that. I think what really happened was there was a picture. I hope we can put it up on the screen. There was a picture of him later with all of the cut he had from the impact of the forehead in his face. And it's like 40 stitches. It's something absurd. Something this giant cut on his face. When he says he can't see, and the referee ultimately heard that, Jason Herzog, they don't really have much of a choice at that point. At that point, they have to call it. They can usually give you a little bit of time to kind of shake it out, but really not much once that's been declared as sort of a state of being. And I believe him. I believe he couldn't see. I absolutely believe he couldn't see. I think it's probably very true. But it doesn't matter. In the end, it goes in as a no contest. A terrible string for him in these last two fights. Well, excuse me. Yes, in the last two fights. He had the win over Buckley previous to that in 2022. And then he had the Hermanson fight, obviously, before that, which was also a weird kind of fight where he kind of underperformed. But that's not the case here. So I feel bad for him. I feel bad for Imavov because I don't think he wanted to end up in a no contest. Both guys getting less of their purse than they ordinarily would. Just really an unfortunate set of circumstances in the way that goes. Okay, also on this card in the prelim section, how about this one? Jasmine Jasudavicius defeating Miranda Maverick. Boy, I got to tell you, years ago, or a couple of years ago maybe like right during the pandemic, whenever, I forget exactly when Miranda Maverick got signed. I was pretty high on her as a prospect. I still think she's got a lot of good ability, but it has not really materialized in efforts the way that it should have. Certainly not tonight. Jasudavicius looked awesome, or Jasudavicius. I don't know if the U is silent. She looked great. Her left hook was landing consistently. She was scoring reversals on the ground to get on top. She was pressing Maverick back with a barrage of strikes. Just, a certain level of intensity on the feet, a certain level of good game planning, having answers in key positions, forcing Maverick to the outside. And then ultimately what ended up happening was Maverick had this difficulty getting to, making effective use of entries. Her entries kept getting disrupted. Or couldn't get off when they couldn't get much going when she tried to get into position. There was just not a whole lot there. Jasmine, I'll say, just really looked great out there. Being ready for the opportunity, being ready for the moment, being ready for the challenge, and honestly, with a performance like that, you really have to feel. How old is Jasmine? So she currently sits at 34. It's a little bit high up there in terms of age, but in the women's division, perhaps that can extend you a little bit further than normal. Yeah, that's 2 wins in a row after losing to Natalia Silva, who we all know actually can be pretty good. But yeah, great job by her. I really thought that throughout that contest, she just showed up in important and big ways in the end. And in fact, I think this was 29, 28 on all 3 of the judges' scorecards. Let me pull this up here real quick. I apologize. I should have done this beforehand, and I didn't because it's very late into the morning. Here we go. So she won that one I apologize one more time. Yeah, 29-28 across the board. You could have given Maverick the first round, but as the fight moved on, it moved in Jasmine's direction. Really comprehensive effort. Job well done from her. And for Maverick, a bit of a turning point-ish. She's not very old, certainly. Maverick currently only sits at 25 years of age. In fact, she's quite young. But there are clearly some levels of improvement that are important to have here. And I'm not seeing them put it together in a package that is adding up. I just don't see it trending in the right direction at the moment. 25 years of age, plenty of time to get it turned around, but I just mean the Barber fight you could have written off. I thought she won that, and then she lost to Erin Blanchfield. Fine, Erin Blanchfield is a hammer. Okay, fair enough. Everyone peaks at different times. No problem. This one was one, again, her opponent fought extremely ably, but this is the one where if you're going to be that person, you have to win this contest. And at least right now, she does not appear to be headed for that. Ayman Zahabi defeating, I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce his name, Ahri Chilean, I think is how they said it. Chilean? Please forgive me, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. He wins via KO with 1 minute. He does a switch stance left hand, boom, he dropped him. Phenomenal. Was perfectly well timed, landed flush, and then a couple of follow-up shots got the job done. Ayman Zahabi has had something of a quiet run. 35 years of age. He's didn't fight at all in 2020. Once in 2021. Once in 2022. Once in 2023. He's on that Gary Russell Jr. platform, or I should say program, where he's fighting just once a year. But he showed up against an opponent here, ready to go. Looked great. Maybe they can keep him in rotation. Would love to see him in rotation a little bit more. See what else we can get out of him. Because I don't have a whole lot to say except to say, despite all the time off, he looked really prepared for this one. Kyle Nelson defeating Blake Bilder via unanimous decision. 230-27s, 129-28. Bilder fell apart down the stretch on this one. Started kind of showboating and getting tagged for it, going single strike, not putting stuff in combination together, and again, getting timed on his entries, just not really setting them up as much as he could. He is a strong, athletic kid. You can tell that, right? He does look like he can do certain things if he can really bring his game up to speed. But Nelson, even though he was older, I think 32-ish, able to slow the fight down to his pace. He got to be able to see everything coming, and even though he had to move a lot laterally on the outside, Bilder just couldn't really get to him. At first, he was doing that, but then he was repelled, and once he was repelled, Bilder never really had a secondary answer to get going. He would try and press Nelson into the fence, and then end up like double underhooked. He could defend some of the takedowns there. That actually went okay for him, but as the fight wore on, it just got further and further away for him. Great job by Kyle Nelson to win that, and then uses the old A in the post-fight interview with Daniel Cormier, blah, 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 eh? Very Canadian of him. So I don't have a whole lot to say about that entire fight, but Bilder looks to me like athletically he can play the part. He can do something potentially special, but there is just a lot of work that has to get done. To put him up to be able to sustain a career at this level. And then lastly, very quickly, Steven Erceg in his UFC debut on short notice defeats David Dvorak 29-28 on two judges scorecard, 30-27. I think that's about right. I think either of the scorecards are fine. Dvorak putting up a much better show in the first round, then kind of fading down the stretch. Erceg finding counter-striking opportunities that were very impressive, putting a pace on the other guy as well, even though he's coming in on short notice. Very respectable effort for the Australian flyweight there. And then lastly, Daniel Belbita defeating Maria Oliveira. I didn't have much. This fight was not my favorite, candidly. It was... I'm not going to sit here and then bash fighters in a show like this one, a little video like this one, but it just didn't. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. I'll leave it at that. Fight of the night: Marc-Andre Barriault taking on Eric Anders. It was action packed. I didn't have to say a lot about it on the post fight show because it wasn't super interesting, but it was kind of fun for sure. And then performance of the night: Charles Oliveira, of course, Mike Malott, very deserving, and as I just mentioned, Steven Erceg. Yeah, those are all pretty good choices. I would have said fight of the night. Yeah, you couldn't give it to the main event, could you, right? Because that was all of a disaster on the Aldana side. But, all right, that's what it was. UFC 290 will be just around the corner in July. Hey, guys, thanks for watching so much. I want to change this up a little bit. I want to do things differently. I don't know how we're going to do that, but we'll figure out something. But I got to go to sleep. It's late. It's so late. But hey, a little bit of a taste of us being back for UFC 289's extra credit. Hey, last thing, really no judging controversies. They didn't have the hardest job in the world today. You know, as I mentioned, Amanda Nunes, Irene Aldana, 50-44, 50-44, 50-43. Those were easy rounds to score, so fine. Same thing in Dan Ige, Nate Landwehr, competitive but not difficult to score. Barrio Anders, again, I could have thought it could have gone a little bit more in Anders' favor, but nevertheless, not a super difficult fight to score. The Jasmine and Miranda fight, definitely not difficult to score. Kyle Nelson, Blake Builder, not difficult to score. And then the opening ones were both, for the most part, not difficult to score, but not really any judging controversies. And I saw they had Chris Lee, I think, in the main event. And Saldi Amato as well. So not everyone's favorites after last week. But thank God we didn't have some of that back this time. That actually worked out in our favor. Okay? All right. Hey, look at that. We're done. I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to go to bed because I have to be up in a few hours to go be dad. But right now, we're good. Thumbs up on this. I'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. live right here, youtube.com/morningkombat. Until then, get some sleep.